Dutton. Well, for more on today's report, I spoke to Professor Keith Bell, a member of the Climate Change Committee.
So what we've published today is advice on some carbon budgets. So this is something that is part of an amendment to the Climate Change Act in Scotland, an amendment that was put forward just last year. So a carbon budget sets a maximum amount of greenhouse gases that could be emitted, in this case over a 5-year period. And we're advising on the levels of budgets actually for 4 of these 5-year periods. And that's to be put forward, as advice to government. And the government then, through debate in the Parliament, has to decide whether they agree with those budgets. And if so, they put them into law. And that becomes, an obligation on Scottish Government to implement policies to make sure that those budgets are complied with.
And in terms of the urgency of this, we saw back in January Storm Eowyn, which left thousands of homes in Dumfries and Galloway and Cumbria in particular without power, saw buildings damaged, trees uprooted. Are we just going to have to get used to this these sort of extreme events now because of climate change, and could it get worse without swift action?
Yeah, unfortunately climate change is already here, and we're already seeing that in terms of the more extreme weather. In particular in these islands, we're likely to see maybe warmer winters, but also wetter. So floods are going to be a really important factor, hotter summers as well, but also more frequent storms. That seems to be one of the features of climate change, and where the kind of the vegetation, trees, wood poles for electricity lines and so on get battered kind of on a repeated basis. And also when you have kind of sodden ground, it makes it more likely that things could fall over, or the damage and flying debris. So those are some of the causes of what happened in those storms. And these are a factor of what climate change can do. And unfortunately, it is still going to get worse. And of course, the mission for every government in the world, is to take action such that it doesn't get too much worse.
The Scottish Government used to pride itself on having, as it said, world-leading climate targets, but those have been pushed back a bit. Are you worried that those ambitions are being watered down?
It's really important that targets are achievable and are realistic. So actually, what was legislated by the Scottish Parliament for a target in 2030 was beyond what the Climate Change Committee had advised. So while we would welcome the ambition, it still does need to be deliverable in a practical way.
Do you think it is now?
So we believe that what we're advising now in terms of these carbon budgets very much is. I mean, it's still going to be challenging. We still need to get on with action sooner rather than later. But the benefits of doing it, I think, for us are very, very clear. And hopefully, and when we're reading the report, it will be very clear for everyone else as well.
One of the big recommendations in your report is about new heating systems, the installation of heat pumps, district heating systems as well. The Scottish Government has obviously moved away from that recently. What impact will that have now, and why is it that you see these new systems as being so important when some people have said they're just too expensive?
Well, heating in buildings is a major source of greenhouse gas emissions by the time we burn, in particular, natural gas in homes. So we've got to find another way of heating our buildings. Fortunately, we do have the technologies. Heat pumps have been around for years and years. They're widely used in other parts of the world, in particular, Sweden and Finland, so in climates that are colder than ours. And they have a great advantage of being much more energy efficient than gas boilers. So you get roughly 3 to 4 times the heat from a heat pump compared with the electricity that you put in. We have to admit, though, there is a challenge with them, which is that it can be they are expensive to put in. The unit itself is expensive. You might need to replace your radiators, maybe your pipe work. But once that's done, then actually running a heat pump is cheaper than running a gas boiler to keep yourself warm.
How do you get round that initial problem, though? If people find them too expensive to install in the first place, how do you square that circle?
So government, both down in England and up here, have made grants available, which is very, very welcome, and that's been actually pretty effective in getting some of that market moving. it doesn't necessarily cover all of the cost, so which is a bit of a challenge. And of course, it's got to be paid for somehow, so taxpayers paying for it.
One of the other areas that the report says needs to be upscaled is use of electric vehicles. At what point does everyone, in your opinion, need to be driving an electric vehicle? And again, is that going to be affordable for ordinary people? I know the prices are coming down, but they're still expensive. Or is this kind of thing that going green is only really affordable to people who are better off?
The good news, as you say, is that the price of electric vehicles is coming down quite a lot. And actually, I think some of the second-hand cars are now sort of comparable with combustion engine cars. But still, you've got to find the money to be able to fund it up front. So, okay, so there's various, manufacturers will do different deals, I suppose, so it's worth looking at carefully. But the running cost and the long-term cost, even including, paying back whatever the cost is of buying the vehicle in the first place, the cost of the electricity to run the vehicle versus the cost of petrol or diesel makes it, depending what mileage you do, over a sort of 3, 4, 5 year period, a cheaper option. Like I say, if you've got the money up front to be able to buy it, it is still a challenge. It's a difficult decision to make if you haven't got the benefit of a driveway. So be able to park in the driveway and just plug in overnight. That's easy, and you can get a good tariff for the cost of the electricity there. But if you're relying on just parking on the street, you haven't wanted to make use of public charge points. So that's still something that could be better developed, I think. So that's an area where we'd like to see improvement, action by government, and action also, I think, by the energy regulator as well, in terms of the sort of level of competition and driving down of the price of the electricity you get from those charge points.
There's recommendations in this report as well for farmers about changing some of the practices, and also in some cases different use of land, including planting more forestry. Isn't there a danger with these changes that farmers end up producing less, and Scotland, the UK becomes a bit more reliant on imports, which in themselves wouldn't necessarily be very carbon friendly?
Yeah, so I think a lot of Scottish produce is actually already exported. So the idea that this is kind of contributing to food security, well, it depends what the food is, what the food products are. So, there is a kind of a trade that goes on already. But of course, it's important in terms of farmers' livelihoods that is not adversely impacted. So what we're suggesting is that we need to address the greenhouse gas emissions associated with, in particular with meat farming, with cattle and with sheep. And yeah, we would expect to see a reduction in the size of herds, but not elimination at all. It's about maintaining a kind of a sustainable level of farming, if you like.
We've talked a lot about money and affordability in this interview. In the report, you say that if the UK government were to remove policy costs and levies from electricity bills, then people could end up paying less for their power. Is that as simple as it sounds? How quickly could it happen? How much might people save if this was to happen?
Yeah, so this is a legacy of the days when renewable electricity was nothing like as cheap as it is today. So it was a way of getting the industry going and getting that learning by doing, which we benefited from. So the industry can develop wind and solar capacity much more cheaply than it could before. But taking those policy costs off electricity bills might reduce those bills by something like 20 to 30%. The question then is what you do instead. So these are still costs that need to be paid, and it could be put onto gas bills. I mean, gas is the thing we want to disincentivize, to discourage people from using that, encourage to move away from gas to electricity for heating. Alternatively, you could go onto taxation. Not an easy policy decision, but I think there are